Imagine a young woman, innocent and bound by a chilling vow, stepping into a world of secrets and power. Will love conquer her gilded cage? Dive into this captivating tale. But first, hit that like button to fuel the journey. Subscribe and ring the bell for more heart-stirring stories. Your support brings these tales to life. Join us now. The flickering chandelier cast a ghostly glow over the ancient church in Concord, New Hampshire. The air held the faint scent of wax candles, and the organ's hum echoed like a curse. I, Emily Harper, 24, stood in a silk wedding gown, its fabric clinging to my skin, cold as ice. My hands trembled, clutching the silver ring, my mother's heirloom, its edges worn from years of her touch. Today, I was to marry James Vaughn, a Boston real estate titan, to save my mother from illness and my father from crushing debt. This wasn't a dream. It was a deal. The pews were nearly empty, save for my mother, Margaret, her frail frame hunched in the front row. Her eyes, brimming with tears, locked on mine, whispering a silent apology. I wanted to run, to tear off this dress and flee down Concord's leaf-strewn streets, back to my little weaving shop where the clack of the loom was my only master. But her gaze held me fast. For her, I'd bear this. James entered, tall and imposing, his gray eyes sharp as flint. His jaw, chiseled and unyielding, matched the tailored lines of his black suit. He moved with the quiet authority of a man who owned everything. Buildings, lives, and now me. We belong to each other, he said, his voice low, steady, by duty. The words cut, devoid of warmth, marking me as his in a transaction sealed by my father's desperation. I bit my lip, tasting salt. Duty isn't a heart, I replied, my voice barely a whisper. His eyes flickered, unreadable, then turned away. The ceremony was a blur of vows I didn't feel, the organ drowning my thoughts. I clutched the silver ring, my anchor. I saw Mother in our old kitchen, her voice soft, singing lullabies as bread baked, the scent of flour and warmth wrapping us. That memory was my shield against the cold promise of James's world. When the priest pronounced us bound, James's hand grazed mine, firm and possessive. My pulse quickened, not from love, but from a spark I couldn't name, dangerous and alive. We left the church for his estate, a sprawling mansion on Boston's outskirts. The car ride was silent, the hum of the engine amplifying the distance between us. His profile was stone, eyes fixed on the road. I pressed the ring against my palm, its cool metal grounding me. Mother's songs echoed in my mind, but they couldn't drown the weight of this new life. The mansion loomed, its stone facade lit by lanterns, exuding wealth and isolation. Inside, the air carried the scent of sandalwood, heavy and unfamiliar. A grand staircase spiraled upward, and a fireplace glowed in the parlor, but the warmth felt hollow. James led me to a guest room, his steps precise. "This is yours," he said, gesturing to a four-poster bed draped in silk. "Don't ask. Too many questions." His tone was a command, his eyes locking mine, asserting control. I nodded, throat tight, but my defiance flickered. "I'm not a prisoner," I said, voice steady despite my racing heart. He paused, jaw tightening, then left without a word. Alone, I sank onto the bed, the silk cool against my skin. My suitcase lay open, a lifeline to my old world. As I unpacked, my fingers brushed a folded paper tucked in a pocket. A letter in Mother's handwriting. My breath caught. I unfolded it, the ink faded but clear. "Forgive your father, Emily. He did what he thought was right." The words struck like a bell, sharp and confusing. Forgive him for what? The debt? Something deeper? My hands shook, the ring glinting in the lamplight. This secret, buried in her words, was a thread I couldn't yet pull, but it tethered me to questions I'd never dared ask. I slipped the letter under my pillow, its weight a quiet promise of truth. The room felt smaller, the sandalwood scent thicker, as if James's presence lingered even in his absence. His words, "We belong to each other," echoed, not a vow but a claim, one I sensed would mark every night in this gilded cage. Yet, that spark, the one I felt in the church, stirred again, unbidden. Was it fear, or something I wasn't ready to name? I stood, smoothing my dress, and walked to the window. Concord's distant lights twinkled, a reminder of Mother, Tommy, and the life I'd left. I pressed the ring to my lips, whispering a vow of my own. I'd survive this, for them. But as James's footsteps echoed down the hall, firm and deliberate, I wondered if survival meant guarding my heart, or risking it. The fireplace crackled, casting shadows that danced like ghosts. Mother's lullaby played in my mind, soft and steady, a beacon in the dark. I held the ring, its silver warm now from my touch. This marriage was a chain, but that letter was a key. Whatever truth lay hidden, I'd find it, and in finding it, I'd find myself. The sandalwood scent of James's mansion clung to everything, heavy as the silence that defined my new life. Each morning I woke to the glow of a fireplace that warmed the parlor, but not my heart. This place, with its marble floors and towering portraits, was a gilded cage, beautiful and suffocating. I, Emily Harper, was its captive, bound by a vow to save my mother and father. The silver ring on my finger, my mother's heirloom, was my only tether to the world I'd left behind in Concord. Days blurred in the mansion's stillness. James was a shadow, appearing only to issue commands. "Don't cause trouble," he said one morning, his gray eyes slicing through me as he adjusted his cufflinks. His voice, low and unyielding, carried the weight of a man used to obedience. I stood in the parlor, clutching a skein of wool I'd brought from my weaving shop, my fingers itching for the loom's familiar rhythm. "I'm not your servant," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. He paused, jaw tight, then strode out, leaving the air colder. I found solace in small acts of defiance. In the parlor, I set up a makeshift weaving corner, threading wool through my fingers, each loop a whisper of freedom. I was stitching a scarf for Tommy, my 16-year-old brother, his lopsided grin vivid in my mind. The clack of my needles echoed the loom back home, a sound that grounded me when the mansion's opulence threatened to swallow me whole. But even this felt fragile, like a thread stretched too thin. One afternoon, James allowed me to visit Mother in Concord. The drive was silent, his hands steady on the wheel, his profile carved from stone. I pressed the silver ring to my palm, its edges a quiet comfort. At our small house, the kitchen smelled of baked bread, a scent that wrapped me like a hug. Mother sat by the window, her face pale but her eyes bright. I knelt beside her, wiping sweat from her brow with a cloth, her skin warm under my touch. "You're too good, Emily," she whispered, her voice frail. I smiled, hiding the ache in my chest. For her, I'd endure anything. As I tidied her bedside, my fingers brushed a hospital bill tucked under a book. My breath caught. The balance was 0, stamped paid, in full. My heart stuttered. Father couldn't have managed this. I glanced at Mother, her eyes closed, then slipped the bill into my pocket. In the car, I confronted James, my voice sharp. "Did you pay for Mother's treatment?" His hands tightened on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead. "It's my duty," he said, the words clipped, offering no warmth. I wanted to press further, to demand why he'd hide it, but his gaze flicked to me, brief and unreadable, silencing my questions. Was this kindness or control? The spark from the church stirred again, unsettling me. Back at the mansion, the weight of his action gnawed at me. I wove faster, the scarf for Tommy taking shape, its blue threads a promise of home. But the bill, now hidden in my drawer beside Mother's letter, was a knot I couldn't untangle. James's duty felt like a chain, binding me tighter to this life. Yet his fleeting glance in the car, soft for a heartbeat, lingered in my mind. A crack in his armor I didn't understand. That evening, a new shadow entered the parlor. Clara Vaughn, James's cousin, glided in, her silk dress rustling, her smile sharp as a blade. Her dark hair framed a face too perfect, her eyes scanning me like a ledger. "You don't belong here, Emily," she said, voice honeyed but cold. "This world isn't for weavers from Concord." I gripped my needles, the scarf half finished in my lap. "I'm here for my family," I said, meeting her gaze. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass, and leaned closer. "James owns you. Stick close to me," she said, voice low. "Enjoy your cage, dear." Her words stung, but I held my ground, the silver ring warm against my finger. Clara's presence was a reminder of the world I'd entered, a world of power and secrets where I was an outsider. As she left, her perfume lingering, I resumed weaving, each stitch a quiet rebellion. Tommy's scarf grew longer, a thread of hope in this gilded prison. Alone again, I stood by the fireplace, its glow casting shadows on the walls. Mother's letter, hidden upstairs, whispered its secret. "Forgive your father." The paid bill weighed, heavier still. James's duty, his claim on me, was a shadow I couldn't escape, present even in his absence. I pressed the ring to my lips, recalling Mother's kitchen, her lullaby soft as bread's warmth. I'd survive this cage, not just for her, but for the truth I'd uncover. The fire crackled, and I vowed to weave my own path, one stitch at a time. The fireplace in James's parlor cast a red glow, its crackle sharp against the silence. The scent of coffee lingered, faint but grounding, as I sat on a velvet chair, the silver ring on my finger glinting in the light. My mother's letter, hidden under my pillow, burned in my mind. "Forgive your father." The hospital bill paid by James weighed heavier still. Was his duty a chain or a shield? I, Emily Harper, was caught in this gilded cage, weaving threads of hope and doubt. Days in the mansion were a dance of avoidance. James moved like a specter, his gray eyes catching mine only in passing, each glance a silent claim. I wove Tommy's scarf in the parlor, the blue wool soft under my fingers, a lifeline to Concord. Clara's words, "You don't belong," echoed, her sharp smile haunting my quiet moments. I pushed them aside, focusing on the scarf's growing length, each stitch a promise to my brother's bright grin. One evening, I returned to Concord to see Mother. The kitchen smelled of baked bread, a warmth that eased the ache in my chest. She sat by the stove, her hands frail but steady, knitting a shawl. I knelt beside her, wiping sweat from her brow, her skin cool now, a small relief. "You're my strength, Emily," she said, voice soft. I smiled, but the letter's words pressed against me. I needed answers. "Mother," I began, hesitant. "What did Father do? Why forgive him?" Her eyes clouded, and she looked away, fingers stilling on the needles. After a long pause, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Your father worked for James's father years ago. He was accused of stealing funds, a lie to protect someone else. It broke him, and the debt followed." My breath caught, the silver ring biting into my palm. Father, a man of quiet pride, branded a thief? The shame explained his silence, the debt that bound me to James. "He didn't fight it," she added, tears welling. For us, he carried it. I hugged her, her shawl soft against my cheek, vowing to right this wrong. Back at the mansion, I found James in his study, papers strewn across a mahogany desk. The coffee scent was stronger here, mingling with leather. I clutched the ring, my voice steady. Why didn't you tell me about my father? His head snapped up, eyes narrowing. What do you know? He asked, voice low. Mother told me, I said, stepping closer. He was framed. You paid the debt. Why hide it? He stood, towering, his jaw tight. Then slowly, he pulled a file from a drawer and slid it toward me. I knew the truth, he said. My father's partner lied. I didn't blame yours. I opened the file, my hands shaking. Documents detailed the accusation, cleared by James's investigation years ago. He'd paid the debt to shield my father's name, even as his own family questioned his judgment. I did it for you, he said, his voice breaking, eyes red with a vulnerability I'd never seen. My heart stuttered, the spark from our wedding day flaring. Was this the man I'd feared? I searched his gaze, finding not control but sacrifice, a quiet plea beneath the steel. Before I could speak, Clara swept in, her silk scarf trailing like a warning. You're digging too deep, Emily, she said, her smile venomous. James is playing you. He needs a docile wife, not a savior. Her words stung, sowing doubt. I looked at James, his eyes locked on mine, steady and warm, like a vow unspoken. Leave us, he told Clara, voice firm. She smirked and glided out, her perfume sharp in the air. Alone, I clutched the file, the ring warm against my skin. Why me? I asked, voice trembling. James stepped closer, his breath soft. Because you're worth it, he said, then turned away, as if the words cost him. My pulse raced, torn between Clara's warning and the truth in his eyes. I left the study, the file under my arm, resolve hardening. I'd protect Mother and Tommy, uncover every secret, and face James, not as his captive, but as his equal. In my room, I sat by the window, Concord's lights faint in the distance. The scarf for Tommy lay folded, nearly done, a symbol of my fight. Mother's lullaby hummed in my mind, her voice weaving through the pain of father's shame. The file and letter were keys to a past I'd reclaim. James's sacrifice shifted something in me. His claim no longer just duty, but a bridge I might cross. I pressed the ring to my lips, its silver a quiet strength. This cage wouldn't hold me forever. The garden behind James's mansion bloomed with roses, their petals catching the red glow of dusk. The air carried the scent of freshly cut grass, sharp and alive, a fleeting escape from the sandalwood weight of my gilded cage. I, Emily Harper, stood by a stone bench, the silver ring on my finger warm from my touch. The truth about father, framed. For theft, his name cleared by James, burned in my heart, mingling with Clara's venomous words. James is playing you. Was his sacrifice a gift or a leash? I clutched the finished scarf for Tommy, its blue wool soft, a vow to protect my family. James's revelation had shifted the ground beneath me. His gray eyes, raw with vulnerability in the study, haunted my thoughts. I'd seen not the ruthless man who claimed me, but one who'd risked his family's trust for mine. Yet, Clara's warning nod, her sharp smile a shadow over my resolve. I needed to stand firm, not just for Mother and Tommy, but for the truth I was weaving, stitch by stitch. That evening, Clara found me in the garden, her silk dress glinting under the fading sun. You're still here, she said, voice smooth as ice. James doesn't need a weaver stirring trouble. Her words cut, but I squared my shoulders, the scarf in my hands a shield. I'm here for my family, I said, meeting her gaze. I won't leave. Her lips curled, a predator's smile. "You'll break, Emily. This world chews up girls like you." She turned, leaving a chill in her wake, but my resolve hardened. I wouldn't bend to her. Later, I slipped into the parlor, the fireplace glowing softly. James stood by a window, his silhouette framed against the dusk. I took a breath, the ring biting my palm. "Clara wants me gone," I said, voice steady. "She thinks I'll ruin you." He turned, eyes narrowing, then softening. "She wants control," he said, stepping closer. "Not you." His voice was low, firm, but the warmth in his gaze was new, a quiet defiance against Clara's schemes. Held his stare, searching for deceit. Instead, I found a truth that stole my breath. "You gave up a major deal to pay my father's debt," I said, the file's weight still vivid. "Why?" He hesitated, jaw tight, then spoke, voice raw. "Because your family deserved justice, because you do." My heart lurched, the spark from our wedding day flaring brighter. He'd sacrificed not just money, but power, a choice that echoed Father's silent burden for us. Before I could respond, he crossed the room, his hand brushing mine. "I need you, Emily," he said, the words a whisper, his breath warm on my hair. He pulled me into an embrace, his arms steady, a haven in the dusk's fading light. My pulse raced, the scarf slipping to the floor, forgotten. For a moment the cage dissolved, and I leaned into him, feeling not claimed but chosen. He stepped back, eyes searching mine, then left, the room colder without him. As I retrieved the scarf, a folded note slipped from my pocket. Clara's doing. Tucked there during her garden taunt. My hands shook as I opened it. "Your mother's next if you stay." The words were a blade, slicing through my newfound hope. Clara's threat was clear, her power in this world a shadow I couldn't ignore. I clutched the ring, its silver grounding me. Mother's frail smile, Tommy's laughter. They were worth any fight. The parlor door creaked, and Tommy bounded in, his grin wide. "Brought tea," he said, balancing a tray with chipped cups from home. His presence was sunlight, chasing Clara's shadow. I hugged him, the scarf now complete in my hands. "For you," I said, draping it over his shoulders. He laughed, twirling, and poured tea, the steam curling like a promise. "You're the best, Em," he said, sipping clumsily. I smiled, but the note's threat lingered, a weight I'd carry, alone for now. Sitting with Tommy, I sipped tea, its warmth seeping into me. Mother's lullaby hummed in my mind, her voice a beacon through this storm. James's embrace, his words, "I need you," were a thread I couldn't yet trust, but they wove into my resolve. Clara's note was a challenge, one I'd face with, the strength Father showed, the love Mother gave. I pressed the ring to my lips, its edges a quiet vow. This cage wouldn't break me. I'd protect my family, unravel Clara's schemes, and find the man behind James's sacrifice, even if it meant risking my heart. The fire crackled, casting soft shadows. Tommy chattered, his scarf bright against the gloom. Concord's lights twinkled beyond the window, a reminder of home. The note lay hidden, but its threat fueled my fire. With James's arms still a memory, I knew this dusk was no end, but a beginning. The kitchen in our Concord home glowed under the late afternoon sun, the scent of freshly baked bread weaving through the air like a warm embrace. I, Emily Harper, knelt beside Mother, wiping sweat from her brow with a soft cloth, her frail hand resting in mine. The silver ring on my finger caught the light, its worn edges a testament to her love. Clara's threatening note, "Your mother's, next," burned in my pocket. But here, in this humble hearth, I found strength. James's embrace in the garden, His whispered "I need you" lingered, a promise I was beginning to trust. Mother's eyes, bright despite her illness, met mine. "You're home, Emily," she said, voice soft but steady. I smiled, the ache in my chest easing. The truth about Father, framed for theft, his name cleared by James, had shifted my world. Clara's schemes, her venomous words, felt distant in this kitchen, where bread and love were enough. Tommy bustled in, his lopsided grin lighting the room, the blue scarf I'd woven draped over his shoulders. "Tea time," he announced, setting chipped cups on the table, steam curling upward. As I poured tea, the door creaked open, and James stepped in, his tall frame softened by the golden light. His gray eyes, once cold, now held a quiet warmth. In his hand was a folded letter, yellowed with age. "For you," he said, voice low, handing it to Mother. She opened it, her fingers trembling, and read aloud. "Margaret, I'm sorry for the pain my family caused. Your husband was innocent." It was signed by James's father, a confession from years past. My breath caught, the ring biting my palm. James had found this. A final piece to heal Father's shame. Mother's tears fell, and I hugged her, her shawl soft against my cheek. "You didn't have to," she whispered to James. He knelt beside her, his voice breaking. "I belong to Emily," he said, glancing at me, "and to this family." My heart swelled, the spark from our wedding day now a steady flame. His claim, once a chain, was now a vow, binding us not by duty, but by choice. I reached for his hand, our fingers intertwining, warm and sure. Tommy, oblivious to the weight of the moment, pushed a cup toward James. "Drink up," he said, grinning. James sipped, his smile rare but genuine, and the kitchen filled with laughter, a sound I'd feared I'd lost. We sat together, the four of us, tea steaming, bread cooling on the counter. Mother's lullaby hummed in my mind, its melody weaving through this fragile joy. Clara's note, still hidden, was a shadow I'd face, but not today. Today, we were whole. Later, I walked James to the porch, the sunset painting the sky in hues of amber. Concord's trees swayed, their leaves a golden dance. "Clara's done," he said, voice firm. She admitted her threats were empty, a ploy for control. I nodded, relief washing over me. Clara's note, now powerless, was just paper. James's sacrifice, his father's letter, his fight for my family, had dismantled her schemes. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick. He cupped my face, his thumb tracing my cheek. "I belong to you, Emily," he said, eyes steady. I leaned into his touch, the ring warm against my skin, our bond sealed in the dusk's glow. Back inside, I sat with Mother, her knitting needles clicking softly. Tommy sprawled on the floor, sketching with a pencil, the scarf loose around his neck. I pulled a sheet of paper from my pocket, not Clara's note, but a fresh one. My pen moved, words flowing. "Father, I forgive you. Your strength lives in us." I folded the letter, tucking it beside Mother's bed. It was a promise, not just to him, but to myself, to carry our family's honor forward. The kitchen's warmth enveloped me, the bread's scent a reminder of countless evenings here. Mother's lullaby echoed, her voice a thread through time. James's words, "I belong to you," were a new melody, harmonizing with hers. The cage I'd feared was gone, replaced by a hearth where love and forgiveness burned bright. I pressed the ring to my lips, its silver a vow of my own, to cherish this family, to trust this love. As night fell, Concord's lights twinkled beyond the window, a constellation of home. Tommy's laughter, Mother's steady breaths, and James's quiet presence wove a tapestry stronger than any loom could craft. The letter to Father, the ring, the scarf, they were anchors in this radiant moment. I knew challenges might come, but here, in the hearth's glow, we were unbreakable. The balcony of James's mansion overlooked a sea of stars, the silver moonlight bathing the roses below in a soft glow. A gentle breeze carried the whisper of pine, sharp and clean, a fleeting reprieve from the sandalwood weight within. I, Emily Harper, leaned against the railing, the silver ring on my finger catching the moon's light. The warmth of our Concord kitchen, where James had knelt with his father's letter, lingered in my heart. Clara's threats were gone. Her schemes undone, but a new unease stirred. Could I fully trust this love, this man who'd once claimed me as duty? James's embrace in the garden, his words, "I belong to you," had woven a fragile thread of hope. Yet the mansion, with its grand halls and silent corners, still felt like a cage, its beauty a reminder of the world I'd entered. I wove a new project in the parlor each day, a shawl for Mother, the soft wool a promise of her recovery. Tommy's scarf, now worn daily, was a victory, but the ring on my finger was my true anchor, its edges worn by her love. One night, James joined me on the balcony, his silhouette softened by the moon. The air felt lighter with him near, his gray eyes reflecting the stars. "You're quiet tonight," he said, voice low, a question beneath the words. I hesitated, the ring warm against my palm. "I'm learning you," I said, meeting his gaze. "The man who paid my father's debt, who faced Clara. But there's more, isn't there?" He looked away, jaw tight, then spoke, voice raw. "My father taught me honor, but I lost him young. Then a woman I loved betrayed me. I built walls. Emily." His confession cracked something open, a glimpse of the man beneath the steel. I stepped closer, the breeze cool on my skin. "Mother sang lullabies to me," I said, voice soft. "Even when she was tired, she sang. It's how I know love endures." I reached out, my fingers brushing his, tentative but sure. "I don't want to lose you," he said, his hand closing over mine, warm and steady. My pulse quickened, the spark from our wedding day now a quiet flame. In that moment, the cage faded, and we stood as equals under the moon. But as we turned to go inside, a folded note slipped from my shawl, left there unnoticed. I unfolded it, my breath catching. In Clara's sharp script, "James hid your mother's diagnosis. Ask him why." The words were a jolt, rekindling doubt. Clara was gone, her threats empty, but this note, slipped in before her retreat, felt like a final barb. I looked at James, his eyes still warm, unaware of the paper in my hand. My heart wavered, torn between his touch and this new shadow. I tucked the note away, hiding my unease. Back in the parlor, I resumed weaving Mother's shawl, the wool soft under my fingers, each loop a steadying rhythm. James sat nearby, reading, his presence a quiet comfort, but the note's words gnawed. Hid your mother's diagnosis. Had he kept secrets to protect me, or to control? The ring bit into my palm, a reminder of Mother's strength. I wouldn't confront him yet, not until I understood the truth. Tommy burst in, his energy a burst of sunlight. "Tea party," he announced, balancing a tray with our chipped Concord cups. His scarf swung as he poured, tea splashing slightly, and I laughed, the tension easing. "You're a mess," I said, ruffling his hair. He grinned, offering a cup to James, who took it with a rare smile. "To family," Tommy said, raising his cup. We clinked, the steam curling like a vow, and for a moment, the note's shadow faded. As Tommy chattered, I watched James, his laughter soft, unguarded. His confession on the balcony, his father, his betrayal, echoed Mother's lullabies, a shared vulnerability that bound us. I placed the finished shawl in a basket, its folds a promise to Mother. The note, hidden in my pocket, was a question I'd face, but not tonight. Tonight, I held on to this fragile piece, the warmth of tea and family. I stood by the parlor window, Concord's lights twinkling in the distance. Mother's lullaby hummed in my mind, her voice a beacon through doubt. James's hand, warm over mine, was a new melody, one I wanted to trust. I pressed the ring to my lips, its silver a quiet strength. Clara's note was a challenge, but I'd weave through it, as I had every thread of this life. The moon's glow lingered, a gentle promise that love, like family, could endure. The glass walls of James's Boston office reflected the city's skyline, a glittering cage against the morning light. The air held the bold scent of coffee, sharp and grounding, as I stood by his desk, the silver ring on my finger warm from my touch. Clara's note, James hid your mother's diagnosis, burned in my pocket, a shadow over the fragile trust we'd built. I, Emily Harper, had woven a shawl for Mother, held James's hand under the moon. But this secret threatened to unravel everything. Could I love a man who kept such truths from me? James sat behind the desk, his gray eyes steady but wary, papers, neatly stacked. The memory of his confession on the balcony, his father's loss, his betrayal, had softened my heart. But Clara's words lingered, sharp as thorns. I'd come to confront him, not as a captive, but as a woman claiming her truth. The ring bit into my palm, Mother's lullaby a quiet strength in my mind. Why did you hide Mother's diagnosis? I asked, voice firm, holding up the note. His face paled, jaw tightening, but he didn't look away. Clara's poison, he said, voice low, standing to face me. I found out months ago before we married. I kept it quiet to spare you the worry. His eyes reddened, raw with guilt. I wanted to protect you, Emily. My breath caught, anger flaring. Protect me? I said, stepping closer. By lying? He flinched, as if my words were a blow, and pulled a medical file from a drawer, sliding it across the desk. I opened it, hands trembling. Reports detailed Mother's condition, stable now, with notes from James's payments for her care. He'd known her illness was worse than I'd thought, yet ensured her treatment without burdening me. I was wrong, he said, voice breaking. I thought I could carry it alone. His gaze held mine, not commanding but pleading, a man stripped of his walls. My anger softened, replaced by a pang of understanding. He'd acted as father had, bearing, shame to shield us. I turned away, the city's lights blurring through the glass. Mother's frail smile, Tommy's laughter, they were my anchors. I'd forgiven Father for his silence. Could I forgive James for his? The ring warmed my finger, a reminder of love's endurance. I walked to Concord, needing Mother's wisdom. In our kitchen, the scent of baked bread wrapped me like a hug. She sat knitting, her shawl, my gift, draped over her shoulders. I poured tea, the steam curling, and told her everything. Your father hid his pain to protect us, she said, eyes gentle. James did the same. Love isn't perfect, Emily, but it's honest. Her words settled like a lullaby, easing the knot in my chest. I wiped a tear from her cheek, her hand warm in mine. You're my strength, she whispered, and I hugged her, the shawl soft, a testament to our bond. Tommy burst in, scarf swinging, and set out cups. Tea party, he grinned, lightening the air. I laughed, the note's shadow fading. Back, at the mansion, I found James in the parlor, the fireplace casting a soft glow. His shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the flames. I stepped forward, the medical file in hand. "We'll face this together," I said, voice steady. "No more secrets." He looked up, hope flickering in his gaze, and stood, taking my hand. "I'm yours," he said, voice raw, fingers intertwining with mine. "We'll repair what's broken." My heart swelled, the spark from our wedding now a steady fire. His claim was no longer possession, but partnership, a vow we'd both keep. Clara's influence was gone, her note a final, futile jab. I placed the file beside Mother's letter, both truths now freed. The parlor's warmth enveloped us, the coffee scent mingling with firelight. I pressed the ring to my lips, its silver a quiet promise. Mother's lullaby hummed, harmonizing with James's touch. We'd mend the past, not just for my family, but for us, building a future on honesty. Tommy's laughter echoed from the hall, a reminder of joy. Concord's lights twinkled beyond the window, a constellation of home. I leaned into James, his arm a haven, the glass walls of his world no longer a cage, but a mirror reflecting our shared strength. The fire crackled, its glow a beacon. With Mother's wisdom, Father's forgiveness, and James's love, I was no longer bound. I was free. The soft glow of morning light filtered through my weaving shop in Concord, the scent of fresh linen mingling with the hum of my loom. I, Emily Harper, stood at the counter, the silver ring on my finger catching the sun, its worn edges a testament to Mother's love. The truths we'd uncovered, Father's innocence, James's hidden care for Mother, had freed me from the gilded cage of our marriage. James's hand in mine, his promise to face everything together, had woven a new tapestry, one of trust and love. This shop, my sanctuary, was now a shared home. Mother sat by the window, her shawl, my gift, draped over her shoulders, her knitting needles clicking softly. Her health was improving, each steady breath a victory. Tommy sprawled nearby, sketching, with a pencil, his blue scarf loose around his neck, a symbol of our bond. The letter I'd written to Father, forgiving him, rested in a drawer, its words a bridge to healing. Clara's shadow was gone, her schemes dissolved, leaving only this radiant moment. James entered, his tall frame softened by the shop's warmth, carrying a small wooden box. His gray eyes, once cold, now shone with a quiet joy. He'd spent weeks restoring this shop, fixing the creaky floorboards and painting the walls, a silent gift to my dreams. "For you," he said, voice low, handing me the box. I opened it, my breath catching. Inside was a new silver ring, engraved with Mother's name, its shine a mirror to the one I wore. "You're my light," he said, his fingers brushing, mine warm and sure. I slipped the new ring onto my other hand, its weight a promise. "And you're my home," I replied, voice thick, meeting his gaze. He drew me into his arms, his embrace a haven, his breath soft against my hair. The shop's light wrapped us, the loom's hum a gentle heartbeat. His claim, once a chain of duty, was now a vow, binding us through love, not obligation. I leaned into him, the rings glinting, twin anchors of past and future. Tommy bounded over, breaking the moment with a grin. "Bread's ready," he announced, pulling a loaf from the shop's small oven, its warm scent filling the air. Mother laughed, setting her knitting aside, and we gathered at the counter, breaking the bread, crumbs scattering like stars. Tommy's sketches littered the table, his scarf swinging as he talked, his energy a spark of joy. Mother sipped tea, her smile bright, and James joined in, his laughter rare but deep, a sound I cherished. As we ate, I pulled a fresh sheet of paper from the counter, my pen moving with purpose. "Dear Mother," I wrote, "your strength carried us. We're whole now, and I'll live for you." I folded the letter, tucking it beside Father's, a quiet vow to honor her always. The shop's warmth, the bread's scent, Tommy's chatter, they were a symphony, harmonizing with Mother's lullaby, its melody alive in my heart. James's hand rested on mine, his new ring glinting beside hers, a testament to our shared journey. Outside, Concord's streets glowed with autumn leaves, a golden dance under the sun. The shop's sign, freshly painted, swayed in the breeze, a beacon of my reclaimed life. James and I stepped onto the porch, his arm around me, the town's lights twinkling like promises. "We'll build this together," he said, voice steady, eyes locked on mine. I nodded, the rings warm, their silver a vow not just to him, but to Mother, Tommy, and Father's memory. Back inside, Mother hummed her lullaby, the notes soft but clear, weaving through the shop's hum. Tommy sketched, his pencil scratching, the scarf bright against his shirt. I returned to the loom, threading wool, each loop a stitch in our story. The cage was gone, replaced by a hearth where love and honor burned bright. James stood beside me, his presence a steady rhythm, no longer claiming but cherishing night after night in every quiet moment. The shop's light deepened, casting a gentle glow over us. The letters, the rings, the scarf, they were threads in a tapestry stronger than any storm. Mother's lullaby rose, a melody of endurance, and I pressed the original ring to my lips, its silver a vow of my own. To live fully, love deeply, and carry our family's light. With James, Tommy, and Mother beside me, I was no longer bound. I was boundless. Concord's horizon shimmered, a canvas of hope. The shop hummed, the bread's warmth lingered, and James's hand found mine, our rings, touching silver to silver. This was our vow, eternal and true, a love forged through truth and time, radiant under the morning's gentle light. If this heartfelt journey of love, family, and redemption touched your soul, please give it a thumbs up to share the warmth. Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell for more stories that inspire and uplift. Your support keeps these tales alive. Join our community today.